Our second lesson is from the Gospel of John. The Jews complained about him, referring to Jesus, because he said, "I am the bread which came down from heaven." They said, "Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it that he says, 'I have come down from heaven'?" Jesus therefore answered and said to them, "Do not murmur among yourselves. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world." The Jews therefore quarreled among themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" Amen. And our final lesson is from the work Arcana Coelestia, portions of number 84, 26, and 27. This is in the section that's describing the spiritual sense to the manna and the quail that would be given to the children of Israel. It should be known that in the spiritual world there are perpetual changes of state, and that all who are there pass through them. The reason is that they may be continually perfected. For without changes of state, or without variations continually succeeding one after another in order, they who are in the spiritual world cannot be perfected. The changes of states which succeed each other in order are like the times of day and like the times of year. They never return quite the same, but are varied. The beginning of every state corresponds to morning on earth. When it is morning, the angels are in love. And when it is noon, they are in light or in truth. But when it is evening, they are then in obscurity as to truths and are in delights of natural loves. This delight is what is represented by the quail, which they received in the evening. And the good, or love, is what is signified by the manna, which they received in the morning. In the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord. In the morning you shall see means that at the beginning of a new state, the arrival of the Lord is going to take place. And the glory of Jehovah is the presence and the arrival of the Lord. Because in heaven, sunrise and its light bring light to the angels' eyes, both in their inward as well as their outward sight. In the morning you shall see the glory of Jehovah. This time in the life of the children of Israel, in one sense, no different than any other time. From the moment that Moses was gathering them to tell them they would be taken from their slavery, they began complaining. Not unlike us. Basically, one of the first words a child learns to say is no. And one of the first things they learn to express is how they don't like certain things. Now, that's much more overshadowed by all the joy and delight that we have in children. But we learn how to complain very easy and early in life. And this section of the Arcana Coelestia is well known because it talks about trusting in the Lord. It's all about our daily bread. One of the most beloved passages for many people in the Arcana Coelestia is number 8478. Our lesson was 8427 earlier in this section. And 8478 talks about care for the morrow and those who trust in the Lord. Unruffled is their spirit, whether they obtain the objects of their desire or not. For those who trust in the divine know that the Lord is leading us in all ways towards a happy end, no matter what the appearance of things going on. If we get what we want, we're not overjoyed and boasting about it. And if we're not getting what we want, unruffled is our spirit, whether we obtain the objects of our desire or not. So earlier on than that passage, which is directly talking about the gathering up of the manna, is this section that talks about Moses just beginning to explain to the children of Israel that they will receive bread from heaven in the morning and they will receive flesh at night. And so the quail, we're told they're seabirds, were brought in from the sea. Don't know exactly what they were. It talks about them as quail. That's how it's translated. And they were eating that in the evening. In the morning, the frost left the ground and they found these things, this food. And they said, "What is this?" Manna. That's the word for what in Hebrew. The evening state, we're going to focus on that because it's talking about the delights. There's a glory that comes in the morning and it spreads out throughout the day. The angels are in loves or in goods in the morning. They're in truths. And then things begin to get obscure. We all know what that's like, right? We get tired. We get fatigued. And perhaps we don't think as well in the evening as we do in the morning. Some people are more night owls than others. But when we're really fatigued, we don't think as well. And we come into what let's talk about natural states and states of delight that in fact sustain us. And the passage talks about this endless variety, day and night, endless variety of all the seasons that in the other world, unless the angels had these states changing constantly and one day never being like the one before it. Unless they had that, they could not be perfected. So the evening states represent delights in natural things. You think, well, that must apply maybe to the lowest angels, right? Not the celestial angels, those who really love the Lord. No, it doesn't delineate that somehow the celestial angels or the higher spiritual angels are out of delights in the evening. No, they enter into those states and then a morning comes. And we're told that we need to understand how delights work in our own lives. That the Lord leads us by means of delights. And that the highest spiritual delights that we can have, we don't necessarily recognize them or even experiencing them in our minds or our bodies the same way we experience natural delights. When we're in an unregenerate state, when we're beginning our reformation and turning towards the Lord, as a matter of fact, the highest spiritual delights are interior and don't manifest themselves oftentimes. Our sermon this morning is titled "The Glory in the Morning," and it's taken from Moses' words about the manna. And it says that in the evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, and He hears your complaints. Jesus talked about what person is there that if their child came to them and asked them for bread, would you give them a rock? A person needs to be begging of the Lord. The Lord says, take your prayers, bring your prayers to me. Come to me, all you who are heavily laden, and I will give you rest. The Lord leads us by means of our delights, and therefore the evening state represented by the quail is the state of our natural delights that in fact is necessary to our perfection. So the writings talk about legitimate delights and illegitimate delights, the ones that are okay and those that aren't. And it's not like we're ever given a list of you got to do all these things and it's okay to have this, but you can't have that. The point of freedom and rationality is for us to look at our delights and find out what is interiorly within them. Delights in this section of the arcana are talked about as being concupiscences, which is natural delights of the sensual body. And there's nothing wrong with them in themselves. Delight comes from love. It's part of the will. It's part of the operation of the senses that have to do with love. And therefore, it's the source of the love in the delight that makes a delight legitimate or okay. So we don't tell people in the new church to do certain things but not do other things based on the delights that accompany things. There are definitely behaviors. The Ten Commandments clearly outline things that we are not to do nor take delight in, because the love that is broken in breaking the Ten Commandments are good loves, and what is instigated or what is acting out are evil loves. Love manifests itself. It shows itself in delights. We're told that that's where the spiritual meets the natural, where the celestial loves of the Lord, the spiritual loves of your neighbor come down and should find their embodiment and be felt in the heart. They should be felt in the body. There should be a joy in the body, the delights that come from the things that have to do with love of God and love of our neighbor. So the arcana in another passage says, pleasures are only ultimate effects, delights or pleasures. All pleasures are such as are the affections which are more interior. Their interior essence is what gives the quality of the delight. And that makes a lot of sense, right? If you know that you're interested and want to help somebody, your desire is to be of service, there can be a great feeling of delight in accomplishing what is of service to your neighbor. And hopefully that's combined in our uses in life where we're doing jobs, we're performing uses in society where there's recompense, but we take delight in it. It's not just about the money. And it's wonderful if everybody could be in the best possible job to let their passions and their delights be coming out, while at the same time there is a recompense that allows you to live and do what you really love to do. Not always the case for a lot of people living on earth. It's always the case of all the people living in heaven. And one of our spiritual tasks is to take the delight of serving uses that we will enjoy in heaven and put it into whatever we're doing on earth. And that can be very difficult. And that can be a place where we can certainly complain. What kind of hand did I get dealt that I have to do this over and over again? Oh, Lord, and we can complain. Is the Lord still taking care of you spiritually? Yes. But if our natural delights aren't exactly what we want them to be, we can certainly complain to the Lord. And in fact, that is natural. And in fact, we hope that there are evening times when we get off work, where we're away from all the stress that has to do with things that we may not necessarily love to do with a passion, that we can enter then into natural states of delight. Take the time we need to refresh ourselves and do some things that we like. I want to focus on this story of the quail. We're told that the Lord sent the quail, and remember that the manna was found every morning, and the dew evaporated. What we might not remember so well is the time later on when they had left the seashore area, and so they were further inland, and they didn't get quail, and they complained, and the Lord sent them lots of quail. And they ran out and they lusted and they ate and they just were filling themselves. And it says that at that point there was a curse because of the behavior of the people that were so hungry for flesh. We might think, well, why would the Lord punish us if we're really hungry and He gives us what we really want? It's because of the motivation, and it's because of the delights within the concupiscences, the pleasures of the body that were being represented by that act. Because not all delights, as we know, are equal. The delights are made unequal by what our motivation is. And so if there is a lust, or there is a desire, a wantonness towards something that's coming from a completely self-serving motive, that delight in that activity is not legitimate. And that's represented by the curse that came when the children of Israel were given more quail, and they just devoured it. The word manna, as we know, is not a name. It's the expression. What? What is this? What is this stuff? I wondered if some of the people, when you were watching, were looking and going, oh my goodness, what is that? Didn't the pastor see that on the floor and couldn't he clean it up? Because I hope that you would say, what? But perhaps you've heard the story enough that you knew it was a setup. The Lord's setting us up too. The Lord sets us up by giving us natural delights that are innately mixed, both good and evil. Hereditary delights, things that just come because of our DNA, because of our bodies. And yet, He mixes in things that have to do with the things that come from heaven, the things that stay within us from the divine. And these things are mixed up. So we can't always tell exactly what it is we're feeling when we're feeling certain delights. And it's okay. Now, one of the things that Christians have done through the centuries is to say, well, every delight is evil. We must deprive ourselves of all delights. And that is certainly not what the teachings of the new church say. We're told, in fact, that we are allowed, we're encouraged to enjoy the delights of the world. The delights represent things that are good because they are felt. Arcana 84:52 says, the good that is placed within our hearts by the Lord need expression and need to be sensed. And it's never pure, whatever we're sensing. In another passage in this same section, 84:87, it says, the pure good of truth cannot abide with man, but it is tempered by the Lord by means of the delights of the loves which belonged to our previous life. For unless this good were also tempered, it would become undelightful, and the person would loathe the delights that they do have. So there has to be this mixture. And nobody needs to think, oh, I must at some point become so pure in my delights, or banishing things that give me delight, that somehow I'm being naughty if I'm eating certain things. No, there's no naughty related to that. If you're gluttonous, then you're lusting. It's not a good delight to be entering into. If you're certainly enjoying a good meal, or you enjoy entertainment and you say it's a good show, that's fine. That's what the Lord put us on earth to do, is enjoy good things. So often we think about the struggles of regeneration. But the Lord wants us to know these evening states, these delightful states, are part of regeneration too. The Lord leads us through alternating states, morning, evening, and morning again. There are states when we have to go through self-compulsion, when things aren't so good, when we want to complain. We're told that the delights of the pleasures which had made natural life, when these are removed and these delights are removed, spiritual delight can be insinuated. So there has to be a shifting. We have to begin to recognize when things are just simply a natural delight and make way for spiritual delights to come in. And we're told that, life can't change quickly. It doesn't happen suddenly. And that the mixed motives for what are called then mediate goods must take place, and the Lord will gradually do His work. The wind blows where it wills. We hear the sound of it, but we cannot tell. And so is everyone who's born of the Holy Spirit. Some of the things that are mentioned as legitimate, decent delights are especially like the hunger that a child has in learning. And oftentimes, a child is learning more for the sake of the hope of recognition or for the glory of being praised by the teacher or being given the sticker. Those mediate goods serve a purpose, to be leading. Matter of fact, nothing will stick in our hearts or minds unless there is some delight accompanying. Which is one of the reasons why during church services we like to do things that are just delightful. Music brings delight. It is the language of the heart. It's affectionate. And it's a beautiful gift to share music. So we're told that other legitimate delights that have to do with heavenly life, the way we dress, the way we decorate our houses, the houses we live in. It doesn't mention cars, but carriages, the walks we take, the recreation that we have. All these delights, when they serve their purpose, are very, very good. So one of the things you may have been raised with was a sense that if you're actually feeling some joy about something related to yourself, it's wrong. A lot of us were raised in homes where there was this sort of Victorian residue of, life is serious and sad and miserable, and if you're happy, then you're not really being spiritual. Now we know that in the new church that just can't live. We've got to quelch that. We have to tell ourselves, we have to tell our children, we have to tell our grandchildren that it's good to enjoy life. The Lord wants us to be happy. Spiritual life, church life, isn't a miserable life. There's a whole chapter in Heaven and Hell that says it's not so difficult to lead the life that brings us into heaven. And that leading of that life is filled with delights. The arcana in another section says that, seeing therefore that a person's states of life have to be gradually changed, it must be that the Lord keeps us in the longing, which is a kind of mediate, partly spiritual, partly natural, partly good, partly evil. A kind of mediate good in affections, which are mixed between worldly and self-centered affections and affections from heaven. Some of these examples it talks about, already mentioned some having to do with the way we dress, the way we eat, and that these evening states where we are in these delights are good states. In heaven there are alternating states which correspond to the alternating times in the world. By means of these alternating states, we're remitted or let down into the delights of natural pleasures, and without that change of states, heavenly good or good loves could not enter into a person's heart. Without that variation of natural and spiritual, the spiritual ones would seem dry and undelightful. They must be tempered by natural things. From this it is then that when manna was given to the children of Israel every morning, quail was also given in the evening, because by quail is signified natural delights. It should be known that the concupiscences, which are the bodily delights, which are in heaven, are entered back into in the evening. They're not the kind of concupiscences or the kind of evil delights that take place in hell. There's a heavenly good in those kinds of very natural delights. And they can be seen on earth, it says, the kind of delight, it says specifically, when you confer benefits in a large way. You ever feel good when you just give something to somebody? Maybe feel even better if you do it anonymously? Say in your heart, that felt good. It does feel good. And it's okay to feel that feeling of you've done something good. And it's what's talked about. It's an evening kind of state, even if you do it in the middle of the day. But you're allowed to enter into that joy and delight of helping somebody else out. Even if it says specifically there's something of glory in it. There are many other similar delights. I've already mentioned the magnificence in the embellishment of the home and the ornaments of dress. It's great to look good. You feel good about looking good? Fine. Dress nicely. Such delights, it says, do not destroy the good of heavenly love, but still they can hide it. And at last, according to the degree of the person's regeneration, they become the ultimate planes of heavenly good. And therefore, they're no longer called concupiscences, which is great because it's really hard to say that word over and over again. That's from the Arcana Coelestia 84-87. Finally, the writings talk about the delights that have to do with conjugal love and how the first delights involved with that can be very external. People are attracted to each other. People feel delight being in the presence of other people. So the beauty and the kind of strength or the things that are found to be attractive between people, this is the beginning. This is the natural matrix, we're told, in which conjugal love as a spiritual entity can descend. And further, we're told that there's a kind of rational good with people. Ability to comprehend things on a deeper interior level that brings a kind of delight, and it can be a natural, rational delight. It's not all just spiritual. It has in it, we're told, rational good. Much of worldly delights. It is formed from the delights of sensuous things and from many things that are of the delights of the world. Into these delights, when a person is being regenerated and reformed and regenerated, spiritual good can then be implanted by the Lord. So just simply having a sense of accomplishment and understanding the ways of the world, understanding how best to approach a social situation or how best to approach a child or a friend or someone, having rational good, having a sense of how best to serve, can partake of that mix between what's truly spiritual and what is just natural. It feels good to do it. We don't just say, if it feels good, do it. But if it feels good, it doesn't mean don't do it either. So we can make applications of this teaching about the delights. We're faced with many challenges. Life isn't supposed to be one burden after another. So we ask ourselves, what are the delights that are now active in our lives? Because we're told if you want to find out what heaven is, find out what delights are. Same applies to hell. When people came to the other world and they wanted to know about heaven, the angel said, inquire into the delights. If the delights that are being felt in the spiritual world are heavenly, people are happy in heaven to express and share those delights with others. If the loves are evil, the people in hell don't have the great delights that the people in heaven have because it's constantly frustrated. So we have to ask ourselves, consider what is our attitude towards our delights? How do we share delightful things with others? Do we have a delight in reading the Word? If not, what has taken place that has snatched that delight from us? Is there a way that we can talk about the Word or be involved with other people? And one of the reasons we're having a fellowship of Zoom isn't to have a discussion group, it's simply a social thing. But because we take delight in seeing each other's faces, we're really missing one another. There's a delight that's very useful in staying connected with the church that way. And the Lord created gatherings where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name. So the delights of worship and instruction, to think about what is it that would reinvigorate delights that way, or what can we do that's slightly different, more creative, to help us in being instructed by the Lord. Do make comments to your pastors about how best our worship services could serve you. Not that we're here to entertain, but we do want there to be a level and a sense of delight. We try to make the place look good. We try to do things and present the teachings of the Word in a way that does stimulate the mind. Delights are very useful. The evening states that are represented by the quail coming are very important. We cannot be reformed or regenerated without the Lord using the delights that we have. And therefore, the Lord said that it is good for us to be here. The glory that comes in the morning, spoken of in our text, is, it says, the presence and the arrival of the Lord in our lives. The Lord makes His presence known through other people. And His arrival in our life is oftentimes what comes along with the arrival of other people in our lives. And the delight we have in the state that's brought about by fellowship, by worship, by instruction. Where 2 or 3 people are gathered together in my name, the Lord said, there I am in the midst of them. Amen.